I've been playing around with Copilot for the past 30 days, maybe a month and a half, and I have at least 5 things that I think you should know before you think on investing in it or creating agents with it. Let me show you. One of the first use cases that I was having in mind was to be able to create an agent where I would input some technical files. It will summarize the information on those technical files, and then with that summary, we'll grab that information and it will fill me a template for project. The idea here is that I've worked with different companies and some of them have a need that it's a lot of technical projects for construction, for example, that they need to get translated into project management files because they don't need so much technical detail. They just need to know where are going to be the deliverables, when it's the timelines for all of those deliverables, and they basically want to be able to follow up on those projects without the need to having to translate tons and tons of documents with technical details on them. My idea was to be able to grab those files for a specific project, drop them into the agent, like in the middle of the chat. I just attach those files and it will summarize those files and directly input them into a template. I'm able to do the template part. I create a summary on my own and I give it to the agent and it fills the template. In fact, I'll leave you the video here where I show you how to do that. But the problem comes with attaching files. Copilot for 365, it's able to grab those files and do that summary. But if I create an agent, an external agent that is independent to Copilot 365, it is not able to capture the information in those files and it needs yes or yes to get those files from SharePoint, from external files directly that are already into the knowledge of the Copilot or the agent, but it cannot grab the documents that I attach on the conversation. And that's a problem because I cannot keep on updating new files into a SharePoint that keeps on getting bigger and bigger. I just want that it's able to look into specific files. You'll understand that better later. My second point is about prompting. Yes, there's a lot of people out there that are prompt engineers and they probably know way more than I do. My point here is, and it's probably the easiest way to understand the struggle with prompting, is to be painfully specific. And what do I mean with this? When you create a prompt, you would think how a person would think, and you would just say, hey, I need you to do this with that. Something quite straightforward. I need you to book me a meeting tomorrow at 9. Perfect. Now, what will the agent tell you? Hey, I need more details. I need to know which is the exact time zone, which is the exact start time, who I need to invite, what is the subject, what is the body of the invitation. Basically, it needs a ton of detail. And the problem with this is that if you are working with generative answers, if inside your agent you have specific topics or specific actions that need generative inputs into them, if you're not super specific, those inputs will be all over the place. Let's say, for example, that you would need to get a generative answer that would provide you a date. When it comes to dates, you will have to specify what format you want the output to be in. So if you give a prompt on telling, hey, tell me what's today's date, it will probably provide you today's date, the exact hour that you have now, the time zone, and a lot of information that you might not need on the subsequent actions that you need the Copilot to take. Now, if you need them, great. But if you don't, that's a lot of information that cannot be used, or even worse, is in the wrong format and you will get more problems down the line. So you need to be very specific on how the outcome that you need is going to look like. The same happens if you, for example, want to get a table, something that you would probably prompt to get a JSON answer. You will find yourself that yes, you get a JSON answer, but the format tends to change. So you will have to specify exactly the format of the JSON that you want, the structure of that JSON that you want to get as an output. But you will also have to specify that you don't want any explanation before or after that JSON. Because what Copilot will tend to do is tell you, hey, here is your answer and this is the JSON that you requested. And at the end of it, it will tell you, is everything okay? You want that I change anything? That's awesome if you're doing some type of back and forth with the agent. But many times you want those to be basically the input for the next action. So all that text in front and after, it's completely useless. So you need to specify that you only want that JSON and in which structure you want, or that you only want that date and you want it in this format. And if you're able to provide examples on how that looks like, even better. We have covered that prompting is one of the main challenges. The other main challenge that is quite related to prompting is being able to trigger actions. The idea to have a Copilot agent is that you would provide it different actions that it can perform, and it will decide which ones it needs to perform based on whatever you tell it to do. So if you provided an action to be able to book a meeting in your Outlook, or to send emails, or to do whatever process in your CRM, it should be able to grab that input that you provide on text or by a message, and it should be able to decide which actions to take next. What I have found so far is that Copilot works directly with Power Automate. So most of the connectors are coming from Power Automate, and this has some tiny problems. I use Power Automate basically on a daily basis, and I find myself that many times with Power Automate, there's issues with formatting of the variables, the inputs that don't work properly. Some of the connectors are not up to date or they are depreciated. So there's several issues going on there with Power Automate that I know for sure that Microsoft is working on them. The point here is that if you provide actions to Copilot and those actions need inputs in specific formats or something that Copilot is not able to provide exactly, you're going to have a hard time. The way I do this, and let's grab back the example of creating a meeting. If I had an action that is like, hey, create a new event on my calendar, that's a connector that you have from Power Automate. That connector will tell you, I need the start time, the end time, the subject, the time zone, and then other information that are not super important. So you will have somehow to find the calendar ID. So you will previously need to be able to understand or get that calendar ID from somewhere. Once you have connected, it's fine. It usually just pops you the name of the calendar and you can just select it, but it's something that you will have to have in mind. Depends on who is going to be using that agent. Then you will need to provide the start time and the end time. That's fine as long as you are able to prompt something that outputs a date time. And here's the problem. All the outputs would be a string. So sometimes it won't detect what you want, even if you specify the format that you want. Now it works, it sometimes works, but you will also need to provide the time zone. And the time zone, again, you are able to select it directly, but sometimes still doesn't work. For some reason, if you have a change in time that we have here in Europe quite a lot, every twice a year, you'll see some issues with detecting the actual hour that you are currently. What I have found so far is that instead of directly giving the action, I create an action that is basically a flow in Power Automate. And instead of having just the connector to create a new event, I create a whole flow that with whatever inputs I have, I convert the formats to the formats that I need. I'm able to force whatever time zone that I want and whatever calendar ID that I want, all within that Power Automate flow. And what I do is that the Copilot has access to that Power Automate flow. It can trigger that Power Automate flow when it needs it. It provides information in whatever format it needs it to provide. And then inside the Power Automate flow, I change the format, I input it into the create new event, and I'm able to book those meetings that I want to book. We have covered prompting, we have covered actions, we have covered attaching documents, so adding knowledge in a live manner. Now the next issue is knowledge, specifically when you work with SharePoint. In theory, you are able to provide the Copilot access to SharePoint and it's able to grab whatever knowledge is in that SharePoint. The problem I have found here, and that's something that many companies will have this problem. SharePoint sites that are unorganized. If they're not properly organized, Copilot is able to access all the documentation that you have there and will start having some hallucinations. It will give you some results that have nothing to do with what you ask. For example, I had a SharePoint site where I would grab all the files that I have from projects, I would upload them there, And then I will ask Copilot, hey, can you give me an update on project X? And is it started, not started? What's the latest status? Now, what happened here is that when I asked for project X haven't even started. So what did Copilot do? It grabbed another file from another project and then looked into that file, saw the current status, that it was halfway through, and it prompted me back that, hey, project X, it's already halfway through, which was not. The problem comes here that I'm not able to specify to Copilot that I want this project from this specific folder. Therefore, it grabs whatever information it can find on that SharePoint. That is something that I'm sure Microsoft will fix eventually, but as of right now, it's a real pain point. What I'm doing to work around all of this. Now, for that specific use case, I still haven't found a solution. And if you know it, please let it down on the comments. But what I do when I need to subtract any type of information or knowledge from SharePoint, instead of grabbing the whole SharePoint, I will just grab specific files and upload the specific files separately. So all the knowledge that we'll have, it's going to be from very specific files that I have. That's especially important when what you want is for the Copilot to be able to provide you consistent results back. For example, I have one Copilot agent that what it does is fill me up a template for a solution for a new client. So basically when I have a client proposal, it will fill up the whole template that I have for client proposals with information of that new client. Now, the inputs that I give that Copilot is the notes I have with that client from the meeting. If I had a meeting in Teams, I get the transcript. Copilot is able to provide me some minutes of the meeting, and then I grab those minutes of the meeting, I input them into my agent, and then this agent will fill up my template. On that template, I have the scope, I have the objective, I have deliverables, I have all the different parts that a proposal should have. What I have done is create one file for each one of those parts. So in that file, what I have is 5, 6, 7, I don't know, many examples of how an objective should look. And another file that will tell me the same for timelines, and another file for deliverables. So now when I ask that agent to provide me the deliverables for that project, it will just go to the file of deliverables, grab all the examples that it has there, then grab the summarization or the minutes of the meeting that I had with the client, and then cross all of that and provide me what good deliverables would be. That is awesome. That gives a ton of consistency, but it's something that probably could be done more efficient. My final struggle, it's probably something that depending on your expertise, you will have even worse or you won't have it at all. And it's the learning curve. Copilot is such a big tool that you need to know a lot of things. You need to know basic programming, you need to know Power Automate, you need to know JSON, HTML, you need to know how to organize properly documentation and knowledge. You need to know prompt engineering. So there's a lot of tiny details that are not so tiny that you need to know. And that's going to take some time for people to learn, and that's fine. But it also makes that what Microsoft is selling as a super easy to use, do it yourself kind of tool, it's not the case at all. If you want something that really works and that really provides you some value, you need to have some technical knowledge on many places. So if you have never built an app, if you have never accessed a database or have never, automated a process, you will find yourself a little bit lost on how to work with Copilot, especially Copilot Studio, in order to build those agents. Now, if that's not your case and you work on a daily basis with Power Automate or Make.com or any other of those tools, or you're a data analyst and you're really used on writing code to get outputs and stuff like that, or even if you're a software engineer, then you probably have no issues at all. But for the majority of the people out there, that's the way that Microsoft is selling this tool. It's not the case. The learning curve is there, but also the potential. The good thing of this tool is that theoretically, you're able to connect to any other tool that you have and make it perform actions for you, make it automate whole processes for you so that you don't have to do it. It's not there yet, but eventually it will get there and the potential is huge. And that's what I'm betting on. There you have it, the 5 things I have found myself working with Copilot this past month and a half, trying to create new agents that automate things that I do on a daily basis. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'll keep on playing around with the tool. What I do on a daily basis is automate processes. So I'm all for Power Automate. Copilot is just to know, hey, what can I do with it? What can I automate and what can I not do? So if you need help with automation, you can also let me know. You have the link for my website or my LinkedIn on the description of the video. And I'm gonna leave you a video on the first Copilot that I created. And I think it's something that you can also leverage. I leave it right here.